Ahoy, pirates of the internet! Today is Thursday. It's February the 16th, and today we have the announcement from Blizzard about the development notes for patch 10.0.7. As you know, I'm assuming at least, patch 10.0.7 will take us to the Forbidden Reach, the starting area of the Evokers, who has been repurposed as an endgame zone with a few things to do in that area. However, what we are interested in for today is talking about the class changes which will happen in the patch. Let's go through what Blizzard is pointing out about each of the specs changes. We're going to go quite quickly through them, mostly because I don't assume most of you watching right now will know everything about every spec. So you're mostly just interested in knowing if some of the specs are bound to be doing better or are bound to be doing worse or just about as good as they have been doing so far with all of the changes coming in patch 10.0.7. So we are starting very quickly with the notes, the development notes about Death Knight. Death Knight has nothing for blood besides the buff, the damage buff they already received. It also has nothing for frost besides the damage buff they already received. It does have something for Unholy Death Knight. Not really much else worth pointing out. Blizzard is more or less just buffing some of the not taken talents of Unholy. They are buffing Defile, which was losing out the dual choice node option with Unholy Pact. They are buffing Raptured Viscera, which was losing their dual choice node option with Commander of the Dead, and they are also buffing Harbinger of Doom. So basically, they are buffing talents which were not taken before, trying to make the choices of Unholy more competitive with each other. Now, who gets somewhat nerfed, perhaps, is Demon Hunter, because Havoc gets a change to Blind Fury. Instead of the I-Beam duration being 25 and 50% longer, now the I-Beam duration is 10 to 20% longer, but it also does 10 to 20% more damage. This nets out to still be some 5% nerf to your Demon Hunter damage. The bonus, okay, the benefit of this is that now you have more global cooldowns to spend. Why? Well, because of course now your I-Beam is shorter, so you have more time to press other things besides I-Beam. That's the only change that Havoc is going to get. Vengeance gets a minor change, albeit likely still not that relevant. Reduced the health of Fodder to the Flame Demon, the one that spawned and you have to kill for the buff, by 20%. Fodder to the Flame was taken more by Havoc Demon Hunters and less so by Vengeance Demon Hunters. That's why there is a buff to the Vengeance version of this talent. Once again, attempts from Blizzard to change some of the less taken talents from Demon Hunter, like Blind Fury for Havoc and Fodder to the Flame for Vengeance. We have a few changes for once for Druid. So Balance and Resto basically get untouched in this yet another round of notes for patch 10.0.7. We have already seen quite a lot of changes to Guardian. This time around, Guardian gets untouched in this set of notes. It's also worth reminding everyone that despite the 4 to 5 round of changes back to back to back to back for Guardian Druid, they are still in the gutter. They perhaps are actually in a worse situation than where they started with, especially with the way their talent tree has been changed around. It's actually not even gotten better since a few weeks ago. So yeah, whoever is developing the Guardian Druid tree is still kind of confused at the moment. So far, nothing really too exciting for Unholy, for Havoc, for Vengeance, and for the whole of Druid. So far, patch 10.0.7 is not that relevant. It continues not to stay that relevant for Evokers. Devastation Evoker does not get changed. Preservation Evoker gets buffed. Now, to all of you healers, don't get worried. The buffs to Preservation Evoker are to a build that Preservation Evoker currently is not playing. So, Ouroboros gets a change in the way it works now. It's going to buff Emerald Blossom instead. Doesn't matter because this talent is still awful. And then Fluttering Seedlings are buffed by 20%. also does not matter because Evokers are not playing with the Blossom build. Maybe this buff is going to help, but if you want a spoiler, no, it's not going to change anything. We then continue to some changes with Hunters. Maybe now it's the time to see some more significant changes. To be honest, these are significant enough because Hunter is in such a dire state when it comes to defensiveness, when it comes to being able to stay alive by yourself, and this one kind of helps. The general talent tree of Hunter has a talent, Rejuvenating Wind, which is a terrible talent, but some Hunters were taking it anyways because of how starved of self-sustain they were. Now, this talent, on top of the extra heal that you would have gotten from Exhilaration, it also gives you 4 and 8% max HP. You know, 8% max HP is some 30k health. It's not something to scoff at, you know, when you try to stay alive by the skin of your teeth, when you try to stay alive by just a few percentages of health, getting 30k extra as a Hunter can make the difference. So even if it's not a damage increase for Hunter, it's still something I would consider quite good coming in this patch. After Hunter, we have some more wide changes because these are to Monks, not to Brewmaster, which does not get changed. They are to Mistweaver and to Windwalker. Of particular interest for Mistweaver is the change of Enveloping Breath into Empower Celestial, which does have an extra addition to its mechanics. When activated, Yulon and Chiji apply Chi Cocoons to 5 targets within 40 yards, absorbing damage for 10 seconds. Mistweaver is coming off of the back of quite a few rounds of buffs over time. This is not the first type of patch where we see additional help given to Mistweaver as a healer, and it's going to continue into this patch. So an extra positive set of changes for Mistweaver. The one for Windwalker, it's also positive because it's a round of buffs. Inner Peace gets buffed and Rising Star also gets buffed. Rising Star goes from giving you 5 to 10% more damage to give you 3 to 6% more damage and 6 to 12% critical strike damage. This is once again an attempt to change and to shape up the underplayed talents of Windwalker, because both Inner Peace and Rising Star are not currently taken talents for Windwalker, so Blizzard is attempting to make some of the more underplayed talents more attractive for Windwalker, which is still, you know, it's still positive, the chance at giving you more options to choose when you want to talent for Windwalker. So that's a good positive change. Then we have, of course, the whole gigantic walls of texts for Paladin. So we already went through a lot of the more interesting, a lot of the more important and attractive changes coming for Ret Paladin in patch 10.0.7. There is, of course, way more on the list. It's just way too many to just contain in this ensemble of a video. But we can stop at just the TLDR to point out that all 3 of the Paladin specs are going to be buffed significantly in patch 10.0.7. It's not just going to be the spec 3 of Retribution, because the rework is also going to hit the general 3 of Paladin, and the general 3 of Paladin has several buffs to the class as a whole. You can find, for example, even tiny things like the change to Seal of Might. Seal of Might at rank 1 and 2 used to give you 2 and 4% mastery. Now it's gonna give you 2 and 4% mastery and main stat. This basically is going to give you, once 10.0.7 launches, 350 plus main stat, whichever spec you're playing. That is the equivalent of you eating 5 different main stat food and getting 5 different main stat food buffs on yourself for free. Another very cool one is taking away Fate's Armor from Protection Paladin's talent tree. Even worse, this talent was in the last bracket of the Protection Paladin. So one of the only 10 points you had, very important points to spend, now is going to be moved into the general tree, and it's also going to be buffed by 100%, because the bonus armor for Prot was 10%, Now the bonus armor is 20%, and all of the specs can take this. Even more so, there is a talent which has made the rounds recently, Sanctified Plates. Armor increased by 20%, stamina increased by 10%, and avoidance basically increased by 10%. All contained in a single talent. Then there is of course the main change for Paladin, which is the fact that now Divine Toll has been taken away from the spec trees of Paladin and moved into the general tree, and also in a very simple route, in a very simple path, because it is right below Divine Purpose, which is already taken basically by every Paladin. So now you have a very easy way to also get Divine Toll without having to spend points into your spec 3. Even better, you have something like Of Dusk and Dawn, which has been reworked into being much better, working much better compared to the one you had before. The one you had before was tied to reaching 5 holy power and then going all the way back to 0 holy power, which was annoying. It was frustrating having to pay attention to that. Now, Of Dusk and Dawn is much more simple to proc. Now, all you have to do is cast 3 holy power generating abilities to proc Blessing of Dawn, and then consume that holy power with a spender to proc Blessing of Dusk. So a very simple Crusader Strike into Judgment, into Hammer of Wrath, into Final Verdict, or into Light of Dawn, and you have procced both of the blessings. Very, very simple. You were already going to do this with your normal rotation, and now you can benefit from both of the buffs. All of these changes taking place in the general tree of Paladin are going to function, are going to work out as being quite significant buffs to all 3 specs of Paladin. Not to mention, of course, all of the changes, the rework, really, to the Red Paladin tree. We could not escape some changes to Priest. This time around, Discipline and Shadow are not getting changes. This time around, it's Holy Priest who is getting changed a bit. Most of these changes are bug fixes. The main change for the patch is the attempt number 74 to make Lightwell a working talent. Lightwell now is 40% stronger. Lightwell now has a 2-minute cooldown instead of a 3-minute cooldown, and Lightwell now is instacast rather than having a cast time. That is how hard Blizzard is trying to make Lightwell work, since they have not been able to make Lightwell work for quite a long time. Now, finally, it's our time to laugh at Shaman. Enhancement is in a pretty good position, so they don't have the need to get changed by this patch notes. Also, Restoration has received something like 4 to 5 different patches and hotfixes worth of buffs recently, so they don't really need any more changes at the moment. Who is left, and who we have talked about being left behind in our last recap of the raid and our last recap of Mythic Plus, was Elemental. Elemental really not receiving changes for a long time. So, in this patch, what Elemental gets is that Ghostwolf no longer removes the Shaman's Maelstrom bar while active. That is what Elemental gets in patch 10.0.7. The last of the classes being touched in this patch, there is no Warrior. There is no Warrior in this round of tuning, it's just Warlock. Once again, Blizzard is stuck trying to balance Summon, Soulkeeper and Inquisitor's Gaze. Just to point out how out of whack those 2 talents were, in this patch there is a casual 100% damage buff to Soulkeeper and an even more casual 270% buff to the damage of Inquisitor's Gaze. That's how terrible they were. There are more other okay changes in the general tree of Warlock, but these two damage increases are the main change as far as the general tree is concerned. When it comes to the spec tree, Destruction is mostly ignored. The other 2 specs are changed a little bit more. Demo gets a few changes. A few of them were particularly focused on an underplayed talent, namely Guillotine, which was not really a solid option for Demo for quite a long while. Somewhat similar, honestly, somewhat similar to Lightwell of Priest. Guillotine gets a casual 200% damage increase. There is also the return of Umbral Blaze as a talent to empower Hand of Gul'dan, and the removal of Hounds of War from the talent tree of Demonology, where we do get more, more fitting and more significant changes, also buffs, to the Warlock is to Affliction. Affliction gets a redesign to Dark Glare. This redesign TLDR is that Dark Glare becomes just stronger quite significantly on single target, the TLDR. Previously, the Dark Glare was gaining 10% more damage per dot on any enemy. Now the Dark Glare is gaining 25% more damage per dot on a single enemy, on its target. This makes it much stronger in single target situations compared to, multi-target situations. It makes it also easier to use. What has also been appreciated by Warlocks is that now Xavian Teachings, the one that makes your corruption instacast, is now being made baseline. So once again, you go back to a world where Affliction has instacast corruptions without having to actually spend a talent to get that instacast feature, as well as the addition of a couple of other well-received entries like Kindred Malice to increase the damage of your Seed of Corruption and Malefic Rapture by 8 to 15%, as well as the increase in duration of your Dread Touch from 6 seconds to 8 seconds. So Affliction was the last of the specs being touched by this patch so far. As we mentioned, Warriors, being the last alphabetically, aren't actually being changed in this round of tuning. So at the end of this entire list of specs being touched, we can see that there was a decent, okay, but nothing really too great set of changes for Demo. Pretty good and positive set of changes to Affliction Warlock. Basically nothing for Shaman, basically nothing for Priest, besides a few touches in a positive way for Holy Priest. Many positive sets of changes to the entirety of Paladin, with an extra positive note towards Retribution Paladin. Okay changes to Windwalker and good changes to Mistweaver Monk. Very tiny but still cool to see change for defensiveness, for self-sufficiency to Hunter. Mostly nothing really for Evoker and for Druid. A slight, very tiny nerf perhaps to Havoc Demon Hunter, and then a decent positive change to Unholy Death Knight. This has been the set of changes for this last round of tuning to specs and classes for patch 10.0.7. But for now, this is all we have to look at when it comes to specs and class changes for this last round of tuning. With this out of the way, I am going to leave you to the rest of your Thursday. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of my Patreon supporters, of course, for the contribution and the help to the growth of this channel. You can still support and help in other ways that don't include having to spend money. Liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to this channel, are fine enough ways to show your support. You can also show your support by following me on Twitter, as well as following me over at my stream on Twitch for whenever I will go back live on stream, given that my facial pain will subside enough for me to allow myself to stream even just for a bit. So with this out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I guess I will know soon. I have a doctor's appointment in a couple of days to check out what's been going on in here for the past month or so. So I'll let you guys know.